Hello there. Let's take a break and do a gratitude exercise together. Today, I am thinking that it would be great to reflect on the ways in which touch impacts our lives on a day-to-day basis, in some of the obvious ways and some of the not so obvious ways, and all the benefits that it can bring us. What do you think about when you first think of touch? Now, before we get too much into it, is it okay if I reach out to you in our discussion? Thank you. So, right now I am pretending as if I am reaching out towards you. And for some of you, this will be a trigger. We'll give you some tingles. Tingles. That is an experience, a sensation that you are having in your skin. It's one of the ways in which touch affects us in this community in such a powerful way. I believe that when I reach out to you, I am imitating a way in which someone close to you would be able to get their hands close to your face. It's a very trusting and intimate action in the sense that we wouldn't want just any circumstance for that to happen. So it could be someone we really care about, a trusted professional, and the idea of somebody being able to reach out to us and touch us near our face can resemble an interaction of affection. And so there's not only the physical sensation that we experience when we are receiving touch, but also an emotional one. And it's very rare that actual physical touch and emotional connection are separate. This usually happens when there is a slight difference in our brains, and that's totally okay, but the majority of us will experience both at the same time. So sometimes if we trip and we fall and we scrape our knees, maybe there's going to be some pain involved there. That is a form of touch sensation. And boy, oh boy, can that hurt. I'm so sorry if that's happened to you. But at the same time, we might give out a little yelp. Ouch. Oh boy. I know for me, I can be very sensitive. I can be quite dramatic. When I've experienced some pain, I definitely put on the drama and I can yelp out as if something absolutely terrible has happened, but I bumped my knee on the corner of a table. But that's the crying out is an emotional response that our brains have to a physical sensation. So it's almost as if the way in which we interpret the world has an emotional lens. So when I say interpret, I mean the way that touch impacts our perceptions. It's colored with a bit of emotions. Isn't that interesting? So I did not know this, but our skin being the largest organ in the human body, has many different types of receptors. These are cells that send information up into the brain that allow us to interpret what type of touch or sensation we've experienced. But I didn't know just how many types of cells there are. So we have receptors in our skin to detect temperature, so cold and heat. We have pressure sensors. We have texture sensors, stretch sensors, itchy sensors, pain sensors, and pleasure sensors. I might be missing one, but there are so many different ways in which we can experience touch, some of which we may not even register as a way that touch impacts our lives. Touch is our direct way of interacting with the world and how we know how to behave in some ways. So I also didn't know the way that touch can impact how we interact with some objects. So if I'm picking up this mug, I might think of touch as merely the sensation that I'm getting. Oh, I think vibration is one of the other types of sensors we have. But here I'm feeling the feeling of the mug. I can feel some vibration with this movement. I feel the smoothness of the mug. And I can feel the texture. Well, that is texture, but I can also feel edges, the surface type of shape that this mug has. I didn't realize that my sense of touch is telling me or informing me how tightly I should hold on to this mug. It's giving me little bits of information so that I don't let the mug slip out of my hands. It's back and forth from skin to brain, brain to skin. It's saying, okay, you should be holding it just this way. Just this way. No, oop. Oop. You want to be holding it a certain way so that I can interact with this object. Apparently, it is quite the engineering feat to have a robotic arm be able to pick up something like a mug or a cup without letting it slip. Who would have thought that we have such intricate mechanisms in our brain, in our minds, to interact with the world? Pretty cool, huh? Now, if you think about it, touch has such far-reaching implications in our experience that it even has snuck its way into our languages, not just English. We will use words that describe sensations. We talk about feelings to describe emotions. If we want to describe someone's character, or if we want to describe an experience, we might use a word that reflects something like texture or temperature. That was a really rough day, or they were a really smooth talker. Rough is texture, smooth is texture. Can you think of any words that might have been influenced by an experience of touch? We might describe someone's presentation or demeanor one day as being cold, or icy, chilly. This is a description of temperature. We may say that someone's personality is warm, bubbly, and bubbly can even be a sensation when we experience that drinking a bubbly drink, kind of effervescent feeling that we might get. Someone is warm, or maybe we might say that someone is a bit too hard or too soft in the way that they've approached something. Their criticism was too hard, or they were being too soft. terms of delivering an opinion or in their argument. These are descriptions of texture. Something was prickly. I find that quite interesting. So those are some of the ways that touch and sensation have even impacted the words that we use. I'd like to take some time to reflect on the ways that touch is a big part of interpersonal relationships and the way that we connect with others. Even our pet friends are very responsive to touch. And we can communicate a lot of information with touch. We can communicate messages that we're trying to convey, like affection, power maybe in a handshake, affection in a hug, power or respect in a handshake, greetings. Hugs are really, they're my favorite. They are very simple ways to connect with people, of course, that you feel comfortable with. I'm not suggesting to hug just anybody, but those that in which we are close are great ways to give a little bit of affection, and we're both transmitting and receiving touch that is meaningful. I read a long time ago that when we hug someone for 6 seconds or more, we release a chemical called oxytocin. It's basically a bonding chemical, and this can bring us feeling closer to the other person. And apparently, I also heard recently that little ones, children, really benefit from 20 hugs a day. So it's not just hugs, but many types of touch that can be meaningful. I mentioned a handshake. It can be touches on the wrist, on the arm, on the shoulder. When we're romantic with someone, being able to be close in their space and to show affection in that way can cause a lot of closeness. And couples that engage in closeness with touch, that can boost success in marriages, which is an interesting fact. It's funny because I feel like we're in a time where we're trying to be very respectful and polite and thoughtful about boundaries of other people, and I think that is incredibly important and necessary. I also think that we are going to have to find a way to reconcile the need for touch in certain settings. So in schools, for example, there may be boundaries for what type of touch can take place for safety purposes. It turns out that children can be quite responsive to obviously non-threatening touch with their teachers and on the playground with each other. So it would be nice to be able to see if there are restrictions. Obviously, we want to make sure everything is respectful. That's, of course, in place. But to be able to interact with one another, to be able to send information, touch to show affection and to show someone's done a good job with a high five, to be able to give a pat on the shoulder or on the back, upper back when you've done a good job, to be able to give hugs, or students giving each other hugs in a basketball game, end of sports. is something that scientists that study touch, I would say there are scientists that study touch would be advocates for. There was this cool study done that that looked at the amount of touch that basketball players, that's why I said that earlier, engaged in with one another on the court in their games leading up to half season. And researchers looked at whether or not the amount of touch that players engaged in, high fives, pats on the bum, on the shoulder, hugs, if these types of touches impacted success in the playoffs. And it turned out there was a significant difference in that teammates that touched more tended to do better in the playoff season, or I guess overall throughout the season. I'm really not much of a sports observer, so forgive me. But that's very interesting. It seemed, my understanding of the summary was that touch fostered camaraderie, trust, team spirit, among other things. I wouldn't be surprised if touch was another way to connect so that players could understand or read each other. That's a speculation, but that can be important. We talked about body language in a previous gratitude exercise and the way that body language impacts information transmission and the ways in which that's important. So, where it's appropriate, I encourage you to give a loved one a hug. If somebody is going through a really tough time, you can ask if they would like a hug. That in a respectful way and in a situation that warrants it. But sometimes we don't even realize how much we might need a hug. And something that I find interesting even about pets is, sometimes our pets can be so greedy with the touch that they want. A dog might want his or her their belly rubbed for ages. And when we stop, they might be disgruntled and protest with a grunt. Oof. But if you think about it, we're not just benefiting our pet by rubbing their bellies. We are also receiving pleasurable sensation. Their fur can be so soft. We can feel the temperature of their skin. It's quite a pleasant sensation. Our pet friends, our pet babies. I say all that to say that whenever we touch something, in a way it is touching us back. I did not invent that phrase. It's something I heard from a scientist in a video that I watched. I'll include some links in the description of some of the things I observed in learning, or rather that I learned for this gratitude exercise we are doing together. They are not sponsored links. It's just information that I encountered that I found helpful and interesting, and I hope that if you watch them that you enjoy them too. So I would like you to reflect on the ways in which touch has impacted your life and the ways in which we can be grateful for it. So I guess I'll close in saying that I am so grateful for the touch that allows me, or the sensation that allows me to be a part of this community of ASMR, to experience the wonderful tingles and sensation, the warmth and relaxation that we get from different sounds and triggers. I am grateful for the ways in which embrace and hug and other different types of innocuous or small touches can really impact our interpersonal relationships, all the way to really special and reserved ways that we interact with our closest loved ones. And I am grateful for the ways in which touch has impacted language and the ways I'm learning about how it impacts our vocabulary. I am grateful for the ways that touch allows me to interact with objects seamlessly without having to think about it. To be able to pick up objects and put them down. To be able to experience the enjoyable sensations of a soft piece of fabric on my skin. The feeling of a really nice pillowcase. The feeling of a cool breeze. The feeling of a warm bath. The feeling of a really, really soft, fluffy blanket. The feeling of a heat pad. The feeling of a warm fireplace on a cold day. The feeling of a cold treat, like a popsicle. These are all sensations. These are all types of touch. And there are many more ways I could go on for how touch has had a meaningful impact on my life and how it might in yours. Thank you very much for partaking in today's gratitude exercise. I wish you a safe and happy day, a grounded day.